What's going on, y'all? This podcast is brought to you by Modern Roots Life. Modern Roots Life is a Christian-owned and operated company, and it's bringing real health back to its roots. They offer powerful, all-natural health supplements such as beef liver, cod liver oil, beef tallow, magnesium, and mineral-rich salts, all sourced the way God intended. Clean, simple, and from the earth. So whether you're looking to boost your energy, restore mineral balance, or just fuel your family with real nourishment, Modern Roots Life has got you covered. Guys, in this community, we're trying to get healthy in our mind, in our body, and our spirit. So don't neglect your health. If you want more information, check out modernrootslife.com and check the link in my description. You know, people often ask me how they can support me. Well, I think it's pretty cool if you can support me by supporting the people who support me, and you get something in return. And being healthy is a pretty good return. What's going on, guys? Back with another Ancient Roots of Life and Wellness podcast. This is episode number 19. Once again, I'm your host, JT, and I got my co-host with me, Josh Truex of Modern Roots Life. What's going on, Josh?
Hey, brother. Hey, guys. Good to be here. I'm excited for today.
But you know what? John Pounders reached out to me. He wants to do something together.
No way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No way. Praise Abba.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I've had a few people reach out recently.
I knew it was going to be big. It just getting into that and attaching to it. He might. Sometimes I see when he's doing stuff with Carico, bro, like he just is, you can tell he's like, his heart is reaching for something. And David's like, no, we're not doing this. I got the books. I proved it all right here. And John, I could see John being like, come on, man. Like, I want to look into some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to pull every single person who's even got a little bit of curiosity for that subject right out.
It sounded like he was starting a new channel or something. What did he say? But yeah, he followed me on Instagram. And he says, hey, glad you got back with me. Wanted to extend an invite to my new broadcast I'm doing. I have you on as a guest. I saw your video and wanted to pick your brain a little about this subject. So.
Get it. Because he's going to broadcast that over to his people, and they're at least going to check it out like once or twice. So
I feel like that I started to really think about the best way, because I have my one friend who's a little bit skeptical about the little season, but he's pretty open to it, is my friend Matt, Postmodern. He's the Australian guy. He's a good dude. And it was funny because he reached out to me and he was like, do you know the church in Colossus? I think it's in Turkey. And he was saying that it's completely buried or something like that. And I was like, dude, that's what we're saying. Like, all those churches are buried. Like, all those places. And I guess they were saying that the difference between Colossus and some of these other places is that the country has allowed the, people to excavate them, but they're not allowing excavation there. And so he was.
Turkey.
Yeah. So I think Colossus is in Turkey, but I'm not exactly sure. Somewhere in that area. But I was like, yeah, dude, that's what we're saying. We're just saying like that if we really want to talk about the little season of people and not get into all the weird stuff, you can just say, look, Jesus says he's coming back at this certain time and all these biblical sites are all just totally destroyed. I was like, what are we supposed to do with that idea? I was like, because history doesn't tell us how they were all destroyed. It's like, and if you say an army did it, it's like, well, how did they get buried under the ground? So we're just saying like, what are we supposed to do with that information? Are we supposed to ignore it? Like, pretend like that's not, because if history doesn't even write about it, well, then what are we to do as people who believe Jesus? Like I said, just as plain words. It's like this physical evidence matches more up with his plain words than anything we're told. So it means from our perspective is Jesus tells the truth, and then I don't believe men. So I'm saying like that. It's like it's the same thing with like biblical cosmology. It's like, well, the planets are doing this and they're spinning like this, and it's the Earth is spinning, and you're like, but I don't really feel like we're spinning. It kind of seems like more like what the Bible says. It's like what I can physically observe with my own two eyes. This lines up with this, but you're telling me that the Bible is not telling me the truth, even though it plainly says this. And then these men are saying, trust me, bro. This is the way it really is. And that's the exact same thing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's something that I feel like people, when they're not being defensive or they're not like just stuck in a bias, they'll realize that that's kind of the humble approach you're taking, is just to say, I'm just literally asking from another intelligent human being who studies stuff like this, what do you think that we're doing with it? But instead, it gets interpreted as like a convincing argument that you need to believe me right now. And in fact, we're just trying to say, like, would you please just like give me your best, like, give me your best, period. Simply said, give me your best. What do you got for this? What do you think we should do? All these sites that Messiah is speaking about are already wiped out. Where are the current places that we should be looking to identify these things? Because are they supposed to be built in the future? Are they not here yet? We're waiting another 1,000 years. That's kind of like what it seems like to me, is that you would either be talking about something that John would have been talking in a way more distant future that we wouldn't know about yet, which doesn't make any sense to me. Um, or something that's already there that's been wiped out. So it's cool that, and this is the same guy, the Australian guy.
Well, yeah, I've been on his show and I talked about the little season a little bit with him, and I was talking about the 700 years being added, and he was kind of blown away. And I really appreciate him because I think he gets it, even though he's not fully on board. He just gets it. He's like that. These guys love God and they believe the Bible, and some of their views might be even kooky to me, but he can kind of say that. I was just explaining to some the other day, and I said, I could be wrong about the little season, but I said, I feel okay with going before the Lord. Even again, we all feel would be fearful going before the Lord, but I feel better going before him saying that the reason I believe this, my why is because I believe what the Bible says.
Every word out of your mouth,
Yeah. So
right?
I
Yeah.
believe what the Bible says. And so I don't trust the history. I don't trust men. And I can, if I go before God and say, this is why I believe this. And if I'm wrong, I'm really sorry, but this is why. And then like I said, it's the exact same way that I would say with flat earth would be like that the Bible might, God might tell you when you get up to heaven. That was actually allegorical. It was actually a spinning ball. But I don't think you'd be mad with people who defend what the Bible says and are willing to be called an idiot for believing the earth is flat. You retard. You believe the earth's flat? And it's like, well, Bible says it's flat. So like, who's God's going to be really more pleased with than the other person who says, well, the flat earther's got a point. It actually does say this, but Moses really didn't know what the earth actually looked like. He was trying to explain it to people who were not very smart.
Right.
And so he wasn't very smart either. When again, I think that's pretty disrespectful. Moses was a friend of God. He probably know more about the way the world works than we do. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, so the people who would say, "Well, you sound kind of like an idiot if you take Genesis 1 actually literal." I mean, like that's dumb. It's like, but I don't think it's dumb. You know what I'm
Oh, there's
saying? Like,
so many things that you would have to take literal. I mean, it would be one thing if the scripture was like allegorical in its trend. If it all showed to be like allegorical more than it did to be literal, but it shows to be significantly more literal than it does to be allegorical. I mean, you almost have to pick and choose and kind of scratch your head and go, is this passage not being literal here? That's how little it is allegorical versus how much it is literal. I mean, we're not sitting there going like, oh, they didn't have a garden. There was no, Cain didn't
maybe
really
the
kill it.
garden actually means this.
Yeah.
It's like
It's,
what?
it's,
It's like actually just says garden. I think it's more simple to just to say that's what it
There's
was.
no flood. That was a rush of this that came out. Now I know, like when you look at certain words, I think this is where like going into the actual language is helpful. Like when you have Satan opens up his mouth and a wave or a flood, comes out in Revelation, we see that you look into the word that's used in the Greek and it actually means like an army. It looks like it's talking about an army or something that
Hmm.
is relating to that. So I think those cases are important to do it, but some of the stuff. Not some of it, most of everything you see in scripture is literal. And I think that's the beauty of it because we can hold firm to what is actually saying. And I think Isaiah uses both flat circle plane and ball in the same
And what does
exact
it say in
time.
Job that like the earth is like a seal? It's like pressed down
Stamped down.
like
Yeah.
a stamp. Like what does
So,
that look
and
like?
in Enoch, I know everybody hates on Enoch for the most part. I guess the general side of it would be that it's just garbage and we should throw it out. But the book of Enoch gives you no ability, especially when you get to the books of the luminaries. There's nothing you could see other than a clock that is rotating over a face of the earth. And of course, people are like, it's not flat. There's mountains. It's like, come on. We're
Yeah,
not
you're right.
sitting here
You're
and
right. It's
saying,
not flat. Yeah, there's mountains.
yeah, there's
So,
mountains, there's caves, there's dips,
the
there's,
place where I live is very flat, though.
yeah, it's really flat out here. That's why you got all the tornadoes and stuff. So, I mean, definitely there's places in the world that are nothing but landscape. And then there's other places that are just flat plains that just deserts being one example of them. But then you have dune deserts, you know? So obviously we're not saying that the earth is just a piece of paper all the way across and
Right.
that's how
Yeah.
it is. But, you know, from everything to them saying extraterrestrials being what the real terminology for that and definition would be other lands, you know, getting into, yeah, exactly. There's so many more things that I think when you stack it up, I did a comparison one time, a chart. It's on my Instagram, and it's like Satan's world and then Abba's world, and then all the different things that they would do, going through and through and through
Yeah,
it.
all the inversion of like what
Yeah,
it
the
says
inversion.
versus what they tell you it says.
Yeah, like Enoch the evil being Thoth and Hermes and, you know, stuff like that, when in reality it's just a deified human being, and then other things you could find through the occult that people.
What if it's, I know that Gary Wayne had that thought about Enoch the evil, but what if it was just Enoch? But of course, like what the devil would do, it'd be like he would try to corrupt some of the things that Enoch told people.
It
You
could
know what I'm
be. I
saying?
just
Like, because that's like we were talking about Samson in the story of Hercules is pretty similar, where it's like it doesn't mean like that there was a Hercules and a Samson. It's like the Samson story is like literally like they've taken his story and they've changed his name to be a Greek god, a demigod. Instead, it was a man fully possessed with the Holy Spirit and it was given the power
yeah.
by God.
I mean that one story I think for sure is like just what do we say, one of the satanic switches. It's just interesting to me when you find that Enoch is same place in the line from Cain, that Enoch the righteous is in the same line from Adam. It's like exactly, they both have a son Lamech. It's kind of, that one to me is like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. And then how it's there, I wonder, you know, there's definitely two Enochs in the lineage. The first city that Cain built was named Enoch, you know, so you have right, it was named after him, I'm pretty sure. And
Yeah, that's what people say is that what Cain like built the first city, or was it the first city?
yeah, it
The
might,
truth the
maybe.
truth is that's when people say, like, of course, I said I leave room that maybe there were people outside where they lived, because it is weird that the God had to put a mark on Cain in order for people not to kill him, even
That's
though
like
the only people that
the
would have been trying to kill him would have been related to him, like literally
yeah.
in the first family.
And people
Doesn't
make it
make
out to be
sense.
like, could be animals, could be this. I know that goes into that whole pre-Adamite doctrine, which I got really deep into for a while, just testing every surface and nook and cranny I could find on some stuff like that. You know, it is interesting. That one was kind of always like, why did they put a seal on him if nobody was there to really kill him? I mean, you know,
And who was he
obviously,
building the city for?
yeah, right. It said, I mean,
Him
it
and his
wasn't.
wife and his baby or whatever? I mean, I don't even know. Like, who was his wife? I mean,
I
some people say
wonder.
it was his sister, but the Bible doesn't say it was his sister. It just says
Mm-mm.
he got a
Is
wife.
is it Josephus? I think Josephus elaborates a little bit on that part
I'm
of the
sure he
story.
does. Josephus elaborates on everything. You know, the other thing is about the flat Earth stuff is that I think the one thing is like I think I'm very confident the Bible is indicating that the Earth's flat, but it's not like explicit because everyone already knows. The reader knows what the shape of the Earth is, so it doesn't have to describe it in detail. And I think that and I'm very confident in that opinion because even the people at your school told you that every idiot used to believe the Earth was flat before like 1500, right? Like the year, yeah, the before Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Remember, he was one of the first globers. So if everyone believed the Earth was flat back in the day, well, isn't it safe to say that the people who wrote the Bible also believed the Earth was flat?
They didn't need to specify, yeah. Even the movies, like, if you looked at, like, most all the way up to, what was it, like, the 1940s, most schools still taught the flat plane,
Yeah, I've heard that,
doctrine.
but that's something they don't try to tell you now. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
some
wild.
people have shown, like, I saw some of the school books that people have, like, preserved, and we're going through, like, the archives and different things like that. Even the movies that you see, the black and white days, that one famous one where, like, the lady's walking up and trying to come out of nowhere and tell the family about the ball Earth, and then they were like, "Heretic! You liar, you
That's what
believer."
that's what Martin Luther said. Isn't it
That's true, huh?
interesting
Yeah.
that the main Protestant, right? The
Mhm.
Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther said that guys like Copernicus were heretics. And you know why he said it? Because he said clearly in the book of Joshua, when he brings up that, I want to say that that is at the very least, you cannot deny that the Bible says that the earth is the center.
Yeah, geocentric for
It's
sure.
geocentric, no, like, whether it's flat or not, it's definitely geocentric. The Earth does not spin. The Earth is obviously described in the Bible as being stable and unmovable many times. So when he tells the sun and the moon to stop, if the Earth kept on spinning, well, then it really would not change the amount of daylight during that battle, right? Because if the Earth was still spinning and the sun stopped, it'd be like there would still be night and day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So either that's completely wrong or it's correct. And
Mhm.
I believe it's correct because that's what the Bible says. And that's exactly the example that Martin Luther used to say that Copernicus was teaching heliosorcery. He was teaching stuff like this is sun god stuff and it's evil. And I don't believe Martin Luther was correct about everything, but I absolutely believe he was spot on because because he's standing like, here's what the Bible says. This cannot be true. And I always point out too is that it's easy to say now because we have NASA and we have rockets and we have telescopes and we have telescopes floating around in outer space and taking pictures of everything that you could say, oh, well, now clearly we know because we have technology. Well, what did Copernicus have to say that it was a spinning ball? What did Isaac Newton have to say it was a spinning ball in 1666?
Yeah, of all
He
times
didn't have
too.
anything like that. So he was relying on other sacred texts, sacred to him. And he was putting that above what we consider sacred texts.
Yeah.
So that he was going by what the gods that he served believed were correct. And then it just so happens that all that stuff through there, as soon as they took their space shuttle or their rocket up to the moon, they said, guess what? We've been right for the last 500 years. We were exactly right. The world, the world, the plane, the continents and everything look exactly like we thought it was going to look. What are the odds?
Especially with the, operation where they went up to Antarctica, to the ice wall, then they come back. I feel like they found the the inside under the dome, became a real TV show, it's like a reality, and they come back and start firing them off, like obviously trying to either hit or penetrate or whatever it was. What was it? Operation uh fishbowl of Dominic, so of the Lord, and it's like it's literally going up and you could see it. I mean, anybody who's seen the sprites and how they come down from it, it's like a reverse version of that where it's going up and bam, and then all the rockets and different things that are going up now, and it
Very
seems like
weird. It definitely
yeah.
looks like it's hitting something when they
Yeah,
explode
or
against something.
scraping something in more recent videos that have, like, high definition, and you get that awesome glow that's just amazing when it looks like it just scrapes against it, and it's just this huge, orange, bright, fiery ball that goes across it, and it doesn't look like fire, it doesn't look like the explosion happens yet, it looks like something is scratching or, like,
Yeah, well,
it's stuck.
it looks like when people have compared it to like a boat, like a speedboat, like if you like an aerial view of a speedboat and like the wake it's leaving, it's like that's
Yeah.
what those rockets look like they're
Mhm,
doing
mhm.
up there. Oh, it's
Ah, that's a really good one,
yeah, it
yeah.
looks like it's well, it's I mean, it's really interesting. I've mentioned it before, but that I was once sitting out on the deck with my wife and we were just hanging out and it was like maybe it was kind of like the around dusk, maybe not dusk, but like it was the sun was kind of at a right angle and we had these kind of tin kind of pots. They were probably once plant pots, but they're hanging from like the soffit of the house, but they were filled with water because there was no plant in there. And I was looking at the sun was hitting them at the right angle where it was making a reflection on the soffit of the house, and it looked just like what a star looks like when you look at
Stars,
it through
right?
a telescope. So it really is interesting if you go to like a dock, at a certain time, like usually sometimes at night, and the reflection in the water, it looks just like what the stars look like through a telescope. Not even the stars, just the planets. The planets look like that because they dance around and they do kind of weird things. And some people say, "Oh, well, your telescope's out of focus." But the point is, the way they wave and stuff, it looks like they look like they're in water. The way they dance
Mhm.
around, it's like
You ever
it's
seen
like there's ripples and they dance. Even my buddy David Shane, he's got. I went to his house in North Carolina, and he's got like incredible telescopes. Like he's invested a lot of money into the telescopes. But I've seen him do videos where he shows like really good zoomed in on the moon, and it looks like there's like it
Oh,
almost looks
it looks like a wave that's
it
going
almost
like
looks
when
like
you
it's underwater.
like a low tide. You would know this because you're close to the beach all the time, but like low tide when the water's out and the waters don't come in so far, so you get a gentle like return ripple back out
Yeah,
there,
it's
and it
really
looks
it's
like
really
it's
weird.
and it displaces the dots or the whatever you're looking at that point on the picture. Like as the wave goes over it, you see the dot go like bloop, just like you would if you're looking down at the sand. The water like displaces that, and it's almost like looking over a lens on something. And when the wave goes over it, it's like the dot's over here, and then the wave comes back and it goes back over there. And so, I mean, that's pretty. I don't know. I was literally going to bring that up, so I'm glad you said that. Did you ever see that video? They took it down. It's not no longer to be allowed on YouTube. I think Rumble has it maybe now, but the guy who he's a software engineer or something along those lines, and he basically took all of the modern digital telescopes and started pulling all of the software and firmware or whatever out of them, and was showing how they have pictures that are geolocated to where the planets are supposed to be. So when you go over them, it gives you that vivid picture
Oh,
of
dang, you know
of the.
what that sounds like? I have not seen that. You have to send me the link for that. But you know what that sounds like? So I got a Samsung.
Mhm.
I'm not an Apple. I got the Apple computer, but I actually like my Samsung a lot better. It does a lot more things. I'm not endorsed by Samsung, by the way. But what I was really cool is I forgot. I can't remember. It was the first Galaxy phone I might have had. But you go out there and it's got this function where you can zoom in like a big time on the moon. And I was like, it was taking like the crispest, coolest pictures of the moon. I was like, dang, this is awesome. And then one day I found out, you know what? It's kind of weird, or not, yeah, this is my conclusion. I was like, it's kind of weird that I can zoom all the way into the moon, but I can't zoom in like if I was at a football game with clarity to a player sitting
Yeah.
on the bench. It's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of weird that it can do that. Well, it's not weird. The moon thing is fake. It's like an AI thing that it can make a
Renders it, right?
clear image of the moon because it knows what the moon looks like. So if it has the kind of right kind of frame of the moon, it can produce you an
Enhance it for
image
you,
that
right?
looks real. And so yeah, that makes perfect sense that those telescopes do the exact same thing. That's not science. That is sorcery.
Yeah, the P1000 and the P9. I had a P1000 for a while. And once I did all my things with it, I pretty much didn't feel the need to have it anymore. But it zooms like something stupid, like 40 miles or something like that. And I was using it in Vegas when we were out there trying to see them. Like, how is this casino top? I was hitting all the casino tops from other ones. Like we'd go up there back when we used to go out and like go to the hotels and casinos, and you could like shoot across, and you would notice like there's no dip across any of these things. This thing is like all just completely like this straight across there. Why is there no accounting for this? I'm literally 20 miles across the city and you don't see anything changing there. I know that certain planes would be like up higher on a mountain. You'd be in here in a dry lake bed. But the thing is, whenever I would go up and I would have that thing locked in on a really good tripod, you would zoom in on any star and it never showed you. And people are like, oh, it's out of focus. And it was like, no, I'm using professional photographer settings and we were pulling this up and hitting them with the exact things. And it actually got even more clear to where you could see like the pixels would fade and it become this perfect like 4K image of the
Yeah, you're
stars.
like that
And
doesn't it doesn't it can't work.
uh,
Oh my gosh, this is a dog.
yeah, but it would show them so clear that you would just I'm like, no, I'm watching this and it's getting more clear, more evident that this is the exact thing that I'm looking at. And of course you get to like where you would show the planets and they would do the same thing, the wandering stars. They never showed anything remotely close to like what you would see for their portray. Now, I granted, when you would get to Saturn, I could see why they render it with that picture. You know, it's not like it's so far off.
Yeah, my buddy David Shane, he has got images of like Jupiter and Saturn. And yeah, it looks like yeah, it looks sort of like what the image NASA gives you, but it looks
Hmm.
more like a combination of, like I said, when you kind of see like it's a kind of blurry thing, but you can see the ring. It looks yellow like the picture does. But no, it does not look anything as crisp. And that's the crazy part about Saturn too, is that when you think about how people see that it's got a hexagram on the top of it. But what's really interesting, I had a video for JT's mixtape. I have to bring this up on one of the episodes. But there's all this imagery from like the ancients that Saturn has a hexagram on it. You're like, how did
Oh,
they know?
yeah, that's pretty wild.
How did they know? Or or is it what if it doesn't have one on there, but they associate that symbol with that planet? Right? So
Yeah, either
it's
way,
it's
it
more
fits.
like the cultists at NASA put one on there and on the renderings versus were the ancients saying they were seeing that symbol on that geometric shape on Saturn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you think about it's got well, you think about so the hexagram on top of or not the hexagon that's on the
Yeah,
top of
hexagon.
Saturn
Hmm.
would be, biblically, you think you get into like what it says in the book of Acts is when Stephen's quoting, what is he quoting from? Is it from Amos? And he's talking about how they worship the star of their god
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Remphan.
Star of Ramfan and Molech.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you think about the seal of Solomon, the hexagram, which is, the Israeli flag logo and then but inside of a hexagram is the hexagon. So the Bible's associating Remphan, and Remphan's associated with Saturn. So it is like Saturn worship, and then you think about the the little hat guys wearing the black cubes on their head. So the black cube of
yeah, the
Saturn's
Teflon
because a hexagon is kind of like a 3D. Like if you
version of
kind
it.
of
Yeah,
draw it in, you get a cube. So is this
it's
just
like
a
the
cult?
Mecca. Yeah,
Is it just occultism? You know what I'm saying? Like where like the planet is whatever reason they have for associating that wandering star with the hexagram or the hexagon is not necessarily the fact that it actually has one like literally
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on the top of it.
It's association for sure.
Yeah, but so like as if they would have known about that, either again, they got knowledge from the watchers, which is possible, or they just associate geometric patterns and numbers with these wandering stars. And it's esoteric knowledge. It's not science. It's not
Yeah.
science.
Yeah, I mean, the Mecca is the other thing where people get into and they think that's the same thing that's up there as the cube, which I don't know. Are we going to find that the Black Rock is a cube, or is it going to be crazy if New Jerusalem comes down looking like a 1,400-mile square cube? And that's the
Mhm.
representation that they're mimicking, like the great temple, the great city. And they're all, because I mean, if you look at that, Mecca has 365 gods, which you think about the Gregorian, they have a god in that cube for every day of the year on the Gregorian calendar, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. And I forget, somebody had a
Well,
whole thing on.
Saturn, according to science, is the sixth planet. Of course, again, they include Earth in that one of six,
Mm,
but still, they're calling it the sixth planet. So six
yeah,
hexagram,
number
hexagon.
man. Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
You know what?
It's all.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. But I was going to switch
It's
subjects a little bit.
It was just, the last thing on that, like, I believe that the Greek word for plante, like planet, it means fraudulent, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Mm, yeah, I need to confirm that again, but I remember I think it was actually David Carrico who was breaking that down, and I've never forgot that and went into it, and I believe I confirmed it back then at the time when you go into it, and but I don't wanna speak and say it's solid, but, something that anybody could look into. I'm gonna check into it again, but I do believe, like, the Greek plante is the word for it, and it means fraudulent, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
Wouldn't it?
You know what I was gonna bring up was, again, so speaking of the Earth being flat, so I flew in an airplane. As I was telling Josh, I went down to Florida. So, of course, I'm looking out around the horizon. Looks really flat from 3,000 feet. All I can tell you that is it looks very flat. But that's not really what I was getting into, was the fact that so I flew American and they had free movies. They actually had a lot of options for free movies. I was actually surprised. I was actually kind of impressed. And again, this not supported. This is not an endorsement of American Airlines. That being said, they had the World's End Pirates of the Caribbean as one of the selections, and I think that's the one you were talking about. And I was like, I kind of remember this movie kind of not being very good, but I wanted to check out some of the stuff Josh was bringing up about the maps. So in this episode of the Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow, I guess, is dead. I think spoilers. Jack Sparrow's dead, and so he dies. I think in the end of the second one, and I think the Kraken kills him or something. And so
Mhm.
he goes to Davy Jones' locker. As we keep bringing that up, is the fact that Davy Jones supposedly is the ghost of Jonah. Davy Jones' locker is Sheol. It's hell. So Jack Sparrow is in this land of punishment, and so they need him for whatever. It's not important. They need to go find Jack Sparrow, like all the pirates and Elizabeth Swan and what's his name? I can't remember. Bootstrap Bill's kid, whatever his
Yeah,
name is.
yeah, I forget his name.
Yeah, I forget his name, but Orlando Bloom, and
Orlando Bloom, yeah.
and so they're going to go find basically hell's. That's where That's where they got to go. And of course, you know what they do? They take a boat there. Which again, we keep talking about how hell, the deep, they're all associated. And so the movie's called At World's End. So what do? They take this boat, and what was really interesting, they take the boat into this really icy cold place, right? There's like icebergs and like maybe an ice wall somewhere around there, and they're sailing through this, and it's obviously terrible. And then they eventually get to a place where they sail off the edge, right? They sail off the edge of the earth,
Yep, yep.
and eventually they get to this place that Jack Sparrow's in, and it's all really totally weird. And I thought that was really interesting. So they sail off this flat plane, obviously. They get to, they go beyond the ice to get to this different realm. And then they were using these maps, these charts that they were kind of turning around. Of course, there was looked like some kind of black mountain in the middle of their charts. And they were like, it was kind of like they had wheels inside wheels, kind of like the Ezekiel thing.
Yep.
And they were kind of turning it to try to to navigate. And then eventually they are trying to, once they get Jack Sparrow, they're trying to get back. And they're going past all these people on these boats, and all the people on the boats were going to the underworld, I guess, or to Sheol, and they were all dead.
All dead, right?
They were all dead, and eventually they realized, and I've never really I guess I've heard this, but I never really thought about it. They were saying that every now and then at sunset you can see a green flash. And so when they say that you see a green flash kind of like at the end of the day, it's really rare, but they said it's like a soul is coming back from the underworld. I might have to research that a little bit. There was actually a bar, or not a bar, it was like a brewery called Green Flash in where we lived. I was like, that's pretty interesting.
That
But
is
anyways,
interesting.
the whole interesting part was like eventually they realized that they had to invert the ship. The ship had to go like upside down under the water, and eventually the horizon would go back around. I thought it's kind of, all I'm just saying is I thought there's a lot of kind of interesting thoughts in the idea of biblical cosmology, the little season, and all that stuff kind of wrapped into a very weird Disney movie about how you have, yeah, like this land behind the ice wall, which is a spiritual place, and maybe the place beyond the ice is not hell. Maybe the land beyond the ice is the kingdom, or
Mhm.
maybe it's both.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, because you think about it. I mean, you think about if you go before the throne, and on that day, Christ is saying, "Many are going to come in my name and say, 'Did we not do these things?'" And they're going to be cast out of where he's at into a place where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, and there's punishment. So what if they're both there, and that's what that movie's indicating? And again, it has the looks like it's got the Rupus Nigra. It's got everything in there.
Yeah, the occult, isn't it their belief that the North Pole up there, that's why the Aurora Borealis comes out, because you have the whirlpool, and then you go down to the Emerald Sun, and that's what's casting the green out of there from the underworld. And, you have, obviously, if it's the north up there, and that's where Abba is, or like where New Jerusalem would descend or anything like that, that'd be interesting if it was the up there and the as above, as below, and they're down there. But I've seen that in a lot of the occult writings and stuff where they talk about the Emerald Sun, and it's down there at the base, the very center of the earth, at the north, and you go down, and
Ooh,
so
yeah, that's interesting to kind of think that. So in Stranger Things, where you have the upside down, which is kind of like this hellish,
right.
spiritual world, because there's no good things in Stranger Things in the upside down. So what if in like where the good spiritual place is right side up, and then the bad part is upside down. So hell is
That's like,
upside down, and I want to say even there was another movie. Did you ever see Black Adam with The Rock?
yeah, Black Adam, yep.
Do you remember when they showed hell? It was upside down.
Upside Down. And, that movie Upside Down, where he's trying to get to his girl, and she's on the other plane, and he had to, like, fall to it or whatever, but, like, he's at risk of killing himself if she was at risk of killing herself. Even the movie we watched a movie called Luck with the kids, and they have the good luck and bad luck, and when he had to go to the center place, and to get to it, he said, "You gotta jump to go down." And so, like, it was interesting. He said their gravity is reversed, and,
Yeah, that was
um,
another. I know that. I can't remember if I saw that movie or was something similar to that.
Yeah, and King Kong, the recent one with King Kong and, what's his name? Godzilla.
Godzilla.
They go to, King Kong, they gave him a life down there in Middle Earth, and he goes to Middle Earth down there. It's beautiful, just amazing place. But everything's got the mountains like this from our world, and then the mountains like this from his world. And then you go down, and then you go even deeper into it. And he had like the crazy, monkey looking, boss that's down there, who had the one Titan that he had, the frozen frost breathing Titan that he had with a crystal that he would control him and stuff like that. But it was the same thing. It's like inverted. You got the up and the down like this, and then the further down you go, it gets more evil. But in the middle, it's like super serene and peaceful. And that's like, if you look at everything with Lord Maitreya and everything, it's all about bringing the Middle Earth to our world up here on this plane, and it'll come out with all the beauty and the glory and everything like that, which I think is really, indicative of kind of a what am I saying? Like adulterated version of talking about New Jerusalem, like coming to earth and replenishing and making everything new again. So, but that's what they always do. It's the inversion. And I think that's why, as above, as below, you get all these things. It's not just in that. The cult has their ways of like our plane and their plane versus like heaven and our plane, heaven and their plane. I mean, there's multiple kind of, avenues you could take with that.
Yeah, what's kind of like we were saying before too is that when you think about like Hebrew cosmology, or which is biblical cosmology, is that when you see the depiction of it, it is a circle. Like it is like
Hmm.
you could imagine if it's 3D, it would be like a globe. It'd be a sphere. But the difference is the part we live on is flat.
Flat, flat in the
The
middle. Yeah.
Earth is flat. But it's saying like the Earth is in the middle of this sphere. And if you really think about it, what if it was like that on this half of the sphere, which your dome is over us, and then there's kind of a there's got to be probably a firmament under too. And so what if it really literally was like at least maybe that's how they view it, kind of like in the Egyptian mythos is that as above, so below. Yeah. So if the mountains are here, there's mountains below that are like that, and people are. and so that there is a light source that goes under too. What if it was something like that? The portals and things that the circuit of the stars would go through,
Yeah,
they would go under too. It's
and
like a three.
invert themselves.
It's like a 3D thing. It's not just their movements go around the whole thing.
I'm sure you've read the Popular Mechanics in 1936 with Auguste Piccard when he took his ball up and went up like 25 miles, and he said the Earth was flat with upturned edges, and then he
Mm.
said that he passed through the waters above, and he ended up returning. It just literally appeared in our ocean. So it's like he passed through the waters. And have you ever seen the Hennessy commercial that
Yeah,
showed
yeah.
that?
I did
Yeah,
a video of showing the Hennessy because I was like, when I first saw that, I saw that people playing the clips from it. And I was like, that is the weirdest booze commercial I've ever seen. I was like, what does this have to do with Hennessy? It was really strange. And yeah, so it's like in the commercial, August Picard, yes, he was the guy who was the first guy, at least supposedly, we're told, was the first guy to reach the stratosphere in some kind of high, hot air balloon. And yeah, in the thing, he's like getting up and he's like looking out and he's finally seeing kind of like the flat plane. He's seeing kind of the edge of the dark. And then all of a sudden, what, like the balloon just kind of starts to snap and he starts to fall up. It's like he literally falls up. And then when he hits outer space, it's water. And then when they actually pan back I think in the commercial, as soon as he hits the water, like there's this submerging in upwards. And then it pans back and then it's like an eyeball, which is kind of interesting to think about,
really.
like the earth. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the one eye symbolism is so much, is because what if the earth is kind of like a human eye?
Yeah, no joke. I mean, I've heard that. That's a really good hypothesis. I mean, it's not just kind of a theory. I mean, there's a lot to say that might actually be the way that it really looks out. Another one is the what's it called? Um, is it Jehovah Witness? There, have you ever seen their main base in is it Scotland?
I
Eh,
think
eh,
I
eh,
want to say it's somewhere in Northern Europe. I want to say it might be Sweden.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
That's what it is, and it is an all-seeing eye pyramid. Like literally, their landscape, all their bushes, everything is exact. Like you cannot. I was also, before I forget, Jacques Picard, I think that's how you name it, is August Picard's son, and he before NASA went to Judgment Deep, Mariana Trench, he went there, and to me that was like a big signal, like they went up and saw like, uh-oh, this is a little different than we thought, and then boom, his son goes down to the deepest part of the ocean. It's like they were trying to go this way, then they were trying to go this way, trying to get out, and that's where the big famous Blue Lake down there or whatever it is, where they
Hmm.
like you try and pass through it and it pushes you back up. It's buoyant. And a lot of people say you can see something in there that looks like a Leviathan. I don't know if I've ever confirmed that, but it's just interesting, like his dad's the one to go up to the first one of the stratosphere. So they say, and whatever it was a high altitude balloon with that big metal ball that he was in. And then his son, in 1960 does Judgment Deep or whatever it was called, and goes to the very bottom of the ocean. So it really seems like they were on a mission during that time, because right before that's what we were just talking about, where they were going to Antarctica, Project Fishbowl. Why would they call it that? I think that's a perfect example of what we were talking about. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, you can call it a ball. Just admit that it's the waters above, waters below, with the plane in the middle, and then you'll have like Sheol down here, and then you have heaven up here, and then obviously Abba probably sitting on the top of the throne, like they depicted Trump sitting on the earth with whatever it was, 2015 Economist cover magazine, I think it was, where it had Trump sitting there with the judgment stick and
I've
the
never
st-
seen that.
this yeah the staff. Um,
Wasn't it
yeah, but
interesting too, like in the symbols of the Egyptians, is that we often talk about the eye of Horus. So it's his symbol is one eye. Well, he's the sky god. So what if
mm,
that's why his symbol is one eye? And the other one that's represented with an eye is Ra. So Ra is the sun god. So both two sky deities that are represented by, was it one, both one eye? Because Ra's not
yeah.
represented by two eyes. It's one eye.
I had to show you this real quick. You see it?
Oh yeah.
See, it depicts him sitting there. It's kinda like to me, like, thinking about kinda, like, showing him as God, because it's like Abba sitting up there. He would be I believe he'd be at the highest part, either sitting on top of the throne, on his throne up above, like, the firmament. He's the only one outside of it, and then they depict Trump here. This one is massive with the 3D printed homes, this whole thing here. Then you got China, like, over here with this. You got all the people down here, which I
What
didn't
a
even
what a weird magazine cover.
yeah, all the economist covers, they tell you everything. I think they're like 3 and 7 years ahead on all their prophecy basically of like what's gonna happen. And like look at this one right here. It's got the crack in the earth and then coincidentally that goes right down the like kind of New Madrid area there on that. And then you got all these people marching with all these things like basically saying leave us alone and everything with the spell being cast over him. And what I didn't realize is after like what happened in 2020 with that sickness there, you basically zoomed in on this one day and it's a bunch of people with masks on marching, saying it. So
What?
I was like, man, this magazine cover is so telling with like, and if you look at all of them, I mean, we look at even like this one was pretty interesting how they showed everybody here and the ones are grayed out. And then you look at the ones that are in color back here, and you wonder if it's like you got down here with China as the panda flexing with the battery, and that is huge right now. Anybody who's watching the EV market and what China is doing with all the electric vehicles, it is absolutely insane how much is predicted between these covers. And you can go all the way back. If you look at these from,
Yeah,
and you got drone,
that'd be a good episode, yeah, just just going through all the covers and looking at the
yeah,
symbols in
the
them.
drone, look at the drone delivery here. You got all these like SpaceX looking rockets and stuff. You got the moon up here that's got the,
So who
you
are
know,
the people there? We're gonna have to I'll probably have to edit a bigger image. Who are the people that are in color?
So in color,
I mean, just I
I'm
mean the people's faces. I mean, is that anybody you can see in the background?
zoom in on this.
It looks like there I see Napoleon back there. Um, who's the kind of darker skinned guy?
Him here is that's I don't want to even like claim to know.
Mhm.
There's people who've done entire breakdowns on these two where they have it all listed out and stuff. But it's just interesting the people here during this because this was 2015 Economist cover, so you figure what was happening during that time and who was about to get elected and who was previously
Mhm.
elected. This would still be with big guy right here, and then you look over here and all these things that are going on between these people. Anybody who knows these leaders, look at this guy here with the VR helmet on. This was
Mhm.
2015, so that's pretty interesting. And this hand symbol here you got going
Oh
on
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. That's real subtle.
So many things.
Spider Man's a color.
Yeah. So I wonder, and I forget what is this is
Oh, that's the Pied
Pied
Piper, right?
Piper, right? So many different things that
I'm
came
sure
on,
that doesn't mean anything.
and then next year was um Trump's first, right? So
Oh,
you
look at
got
There. I see Hillary right there,
yep,
right over Putin's
Hillary,
shoulder.
Putin, and you got obviously Obama. You got China's leader.
See Winston Churchill.
hmm I forget this guy's name. I know he's in.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is
Is this
either.
as Iran or?
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know.
This one, that'd be a amazing episode to get into, but, but all of these, you look at all these different things that they show in, I'll show a couple more before we go real quick, like 2016. It's always the world in 2016. And this one, they did another one again where it's, um,
That's weird that they got Clinton front and center right there. Or not center,
y-
but really
yeah,
prominently shown.
there we go. Yeah, still got him there again. They got all the different colors, Obama. Now he's in color,
Bernie
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and then, you get into I think 18 was a really good one. Yeah, this one was like, talk about symbolism, bro.
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty crazy though to think they have literally have tarot cards on there. Some
Yeah,
really
there's
weird esoteric stuff.
because that's all from what's it called, you've seen the deck, right?
Oh yeah,
Obviously.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so, I mean, what was it? One last one, and then we'll skip off of this. Like, yeah, this was like where they go into like the new world of is gonna clear up. It's always these pictures don't want to clear
Yeah,
up when
that
I
one's
want.
really small. You see if you find a bigger one.
Oh, they've been scrubbing that one. That's interesting. Normally it's all over the place. Wow. This was like a special holiday double issue
A
and the
rough
rough.
guide to hell. Mm.
Yeah. So,
You got to take a boat
but
there.
hell, check that out. You got Plantace.
No,
That's not
you
written.
just stop sharing it.
Oh, okay, cool. Anyways, it says for that word plantes or planetes in the Greek, it refers to it's means wandering, of course. That's
Yeah,
so
wandering star.
that's interesting. But it says in scripture, a lot of times it was used to describe false teachers or those who wander from sound doctrine. So that's probably what I remember from David Carrico talking about it and stuff like that when I looked into it. But I thought it was pretty fascinating, just the word and the root. It's like wanderer, of course, when we see it's called wandering planets or wandering stars. And then,
Yeah,
but,
and they were teaching falsely too.
hmm
We should probably just discuss. I got one more biblical thing because I was reading Ezekiel today, and maybe we can get to the Enoch study. But I was reading today, and I thought a couple of things really struck me too. Is I was reading, I want to say it was Ezekiel. I might have started with Ezekiel 20, 21, and 22. I read today, I think, and I want to say it might be Ezekiel 20, where God is saying, "Set your face toward Jerusalem." And that really just hit me because I was thinking about when in the book of Luke when Jesus sets his face toward Jerusalem, and it was like it
mm,
making this thing. And so when God's telling Ezekiel to set his face toward Jerusalem, he's telling to prophesy judgment against it.
right.
And you can't. There's no way that that's written like that without kind of saying like that. This is what Jesus was going to do.
Yeah.
And it was saying that this was like in the chapter in Luke, it was saying that they were trying to find lodging in the towns of Samaria, but it
Yeah.
said that they didn't receive them. So then, and it said that they did not receive him because Jesus had set his face toward Jerusalem. So it was like they were meant to not find lodging. And that's when James and John said, "Hey Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven?" And he's like, "No, you don't want to do that." But I just thought it was really interesting. And then I was reading the next chapter about Ohala and Oholibah, the two
Yep.
sisters. And so in the prophecy, Ohala is Samaria, and
Right.
Oholibah is Jerusalem.
Judah. Yeah. Judah.
Yeah,
Or Yeah. Yeah.
I think it might be it's Jerusalem, Judah, probably interchangeably as far as
Yeah. Yeah.
it's written.
hmm
But it's basically saying Israel is, so either way, it's Israel and Judah. So the older sister is Ohala, which is Israel. And then the younger sister is Oholibah, which is Judah. And I thought it was really interesting the way it was talking about how, of course, she's a harlot. Both of them are harlots. And Judah's kind of learning from her older sister. And even after her older sister gets judged, instead of like them learning a lesson from what you just saw just happen, they get worse. And
hmm
I thought it was really interesting because it was saying that how they're whores, right? And how they were going after, they were lusting after their Gentile neighbors. So it was saying like that Israel was looking at Assyria and saying, look how great they look. Look at their empire. Look at their gods. Look at their idols. Look at all their stuff. We want to be just like them. And so what God was doing was he was going to turn their lovers or the ones they were lusting after on them. And so, yeah, so Assyria takes Israel into captivity, destroys Israel. And then it was saying that Judah was lusting after the Chaldeans, Babylon. And so if you think about it, even Hezekiah was a good king, but there's that one chapter, and it's very odd because Hezekiah is pretty good. But the one part about Hezekiah, the end of his story is really odd, is when he has these emissaries come from Babylon and he shows them all the things he's got in his kingdom. He doesn't spare anything. He shows them everything. And then Isaiah comes up to Hezekiah and says, so what did they want? What did you show them? And he's like, I showed them everything. And Isaiah immediately gives him like a rebuke and says, thus saith the Lord, all those things that you showed them, one day they are going to take them back, including your sons and your daughters. And Hezekiah says, "That's a good word from the Lord because it says that we'll have peace in my time." It was kind of, it was like, it's such a weird thing to say, like, "Oh, dang, that's bad." I guess he could have said, "Well, that's not good, but at least it's not
Yeah.
coming in my time." But he said, "That's a good word from the Lord because at least my time will be peaceful." But I guess now reading between the lines, it was like that maybe Hezekiah was looking at Babylon saying, "They're pretty awesome. You know, I'm trying to impress them because I want their favor and I want either them to like me and I want to be like them." And again, Hezekiah is good, but then later it's like that they're lusting after Babylon. And so I think it's really interesting to think about how, again, we talk about in Book of Revelation, you have the whore of Babylon, right?
Yep.
Mystery Babylon. So what
Correct.
does it mean to be the whore of Babylon? I think it's really saying it's like it's Babylon's whore. It's like they are whoring after Babylon. And so it's like they are taking back. And so, yeah, kind of understanding the idea. It's like that even it mentions Egypt is one of the other nations that they were lusting after. And so it was saying, like, from the very beginning, these sisters, like Israel, came from there and then she brought her whoring and her lust for that place back to, or to the land of Canaan. So they were
Hmm.
still kind of lusting back. And you kind of think you even see in the story of the Exodus that we wish we were back in Egypt. And so, yeah, that's probably where you get the golden calf stuff. That's where you get all the kind of the idolatry stuff that's getting mixed into like the Levitical law and why Israel is the way that they are and why they are rebellious is because they still have this desire for what Egypt had. They want to be like Egypt. And then so you think about it, then later you have Egypt comes against Israel, right?
Hmm.
Again. And then obviously Babylon destroys Judah, takes them into captivity, but then they come back into the land. And then, yeah, there's still, so it's like, it's almost like it's the exact same way because the prophecies are kind of similar because what doesn't even God say, one day they're not going to talk about how I brought you out of Egypt. I'm going to talk about how I gathered you back together from the lands that you were scattered. So they come back into Judea, and they brought back the lust for what Babylon had. And that's when Christ shows up. That's what they were whoring after. And then so you probably, and of course, I wonder too, if it's like you think about it, it's talking about it, the whore of Babylon is the whore that rides the beast. So if the beast was the Romans, right? So what if those people were lusting after, they still have this mystery Babylon religion, but they're lusting after the Romans, what Rome had. And they
Yep.
might think, when our Messiah gets here, we're going to have a kingdom just like the Romans do. And
Worldwide
instead,
kingdom. Yep.
instead, what God does is eventually the Romans repent. And I'm not saying they repented before they came and destroyed Jerusalem, but what if but it is, again, it's like this kind of prophetic typology where, yeah, they're lusting after the Romans. And guess what? God's going to say, well, I'm going to use the Romans to wreck y'all.
I think you're spot on because we talk about it a lot, especially Ezekiel 20. It's funny you bring that up first because that's literally the chapter where he says, I gave you commandments that were not good, judgments you would not follow, and I turned them over to their own ways. So from the time of Exodus, you realize that they came out. They tried to worship him their own way and say it was for him. Golden calf being the greatest example, but there was golden calf 2.0 as well. We don't forget that there was two of them, which it's pretty wild. They still do that in Rome. I don't know if anybody knows that, but like the Vatican still honors that day, and I believe it's in October, which lands exactly where that would have been in Scripture, golden calf 2.0, and they have a whole celebration about it there. But every single thing that you can see, the trend all the way up through is literally, he's like, do not pass your sons and daughters to the nations because they're going to go whoring after their gods.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see in the third book of Judges, you can see how he even allowed these things to happen where their sons and daughters, it says every tribe, their sons and daughters were traded back and forth between those nations that were there, the Jebusites and the ones that Joshua allowed in. And then he said that he was going to allow this to happen so he could keep them primed for war. And so, he uses a lot of these things for his own will. But even in Revelation, it says that she drinks the cup double. This is why it's so
Mhm.
important to understand your Old Testament, or Tanakh, as many call it. You need to know these things because it's a cool thing to read in Revelation. But if you know where it's coming from, it's really like a profound
Yeah, he's gonna make you
aha moment.
drunk. He's gonna make you drunk on kind of your sin, and
Yeah,
then and your
you
judgment's coming.
you hoard on it, and look what it brought to you. Every single time there was that kind of smearing of the lines, we could say. That's what happens. They bring their ways in. They kept doing everything that they literally saw results from doing these things for their gods. And so they tried to be like, "Oh, we'll do these same things, but we'll do it to our God now." And he said no. He even told Moses, like we said many times on this podcast, that get out of my sight, and I'm going to kill them all, and I'm going to make a great nation of you. And all the way up to what you're talking about, you can see the trend never stops. It literally never stops. And every one of those nations, like you're saying, comes against them, and basically he teaches them, he turns them over in whatever way he's saying, figuratively and literally. He turns them over to their own ways, things that they're doing in themselves, whether they were giving up the wrong sacrifices, given the blemished animals, they weren't giving their best, they weren't doing the first fruits. And then, they were messing with the Sabbaths, all different ones, all the feasts, every day that they were supposed to do it, they were adulterating it. You see this really big in Nehemiah, where he wanted to, it literally says he was going to lay hands on them because they were buying and selling. And so he shut the gates up and was like, "No more, we're not going to do
Mhm.
this." I mean, every chance they got, they were profaning it and bringing those things in, whoring. I mean, everybody just thinks of like sexual kind of stuff when they think of whoring, but in Scripture, the context of it is to to have idol worship and go against what
Well,
Abba's
it's like you're
commandments
cheating
were.
on God. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
that's what I said.
literally.
The 10 Commandments are like the first 5 are about him, and then the next 5 is about how you treat your neighbor. So, think idolatry, adultery. So in God's eyes, it is. It's the same. It's the exact same concept.
Just looking at something what you just said right there.
Well,
The
the other thing is too is like so I actually just looked it up, so I was wrong. So it was Ezekiel 21 is where you get like that God tells him, "Set your face toward Jerusalem and prophesy this." And it's prophesying all the judgment. And then Ezekiel 22 was about Ohala and Ohalibah. But it is interesting to think about it too. It's like that it's like God gives people what they want eventually. And if it's not him, eventually that will destroy that person. It's really
absolutely.
interesting. It's kind of deep when you think about it like that. Is that like what does it say in Romans 1 when Paul's talking about that these people who don't love the truth and they don't love God is like they're given over to a debased mind. And actually they have a pleasant season for a while. It's like oh, you want that sin? Fine. If you rather take that over me, I'm going to give it to you. But eventually it will actually destroy you. And so in this case, where it's like the idolatry and the lust after what these other gods and these other nations had, he's like, fine, that's what you want. You're going to get it. And you're going to get 2 cups of it. You're going to get a massive portion of what you actually want. And it won't end up being good for you. And so, yeah, that's exactly what, man, it really does seem like that is the typology in the Bible. It's even thinking about how that, like, they wanted this law, right? And it was like, so here's my law. And they're like, we want something else. And they're like, okay, you want that? We're going to get way more of that. And eventually that will end up destroying you too, because it's a stumbling block. So it's kind of like, I'm asking you, it's like God always wanted his people just to trust him and walk in faith. But eventually they want something else. And he's like, you want that? Fine, I'll give it to you. And it will be your undoing. And yeah, so that's kind of the continued pattern. It's like, yeah, man, I really think about that in my own life where it's like, is that what you want? I'm going to give you plenty of that. Even think about like my athletics where I'm like, oh, that's where your heart's at? Fine,
Yep.
go run, go crazy, go ride your bike till you can't run anymore. And then it'd be like, and then one day
I couldn't run anymore.
it was wrecking my body.
Yep.
And you think like, so I finally got what I wanted, but then it was like, it was going to be my undoing because it was an idol. And, I've heard other people say this, like, in the Old Testament, it means actual idols. But actually, in the book of Ezekiel, I want to say it's Ezekiel 19. He was talking about the idols in your heart. So, yes, there is actual physical idols, but I think that's the thing is like my excessive love for, amateur athletics as a adult was an idol. It most
Yep.
certainly was.
Obsessions, yeah.
Because I mean, you think about like that how much more did I think about that than I thought about pleasing God? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I shudder to even think about how much more I thought about it. But it's like if where's your number one priority? Like, do you view everything through a godly lens, or you think like, "Ooh, I have to get to bed because I have to work out in the morning. Oh, I have
Yep.
to eat this so I can work out well. Oh, I got to do this because I have this race." And it's like, so that becomes your God, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, that's I mean, we talk about it a lot, but that's kinda how I see the true covenant of Exodus, which is the 10 words or 10 commandments, and he even expounds on it and shows you, like, the feast, which are the 4 feasts, there's not 7 of them, there's the Moedim or the appointed times, but the true book of the covenant versus what was in Levitical law, and they had all these requests that they had there, and that's what he talks about in Ezekiel 20, where he turned them over to their own ways because if you look at the feasts that are in Exodus, it's about harvests, and those go right in line with like Revelation 7 and chapter 14, where he's talking about the harvest and the 144,000. And when you look at it, it's his perfect version. They come and they wanted their sacrifices, and he's like, I already gave you my sacrifice. He gave them the annual sacrifice, which is what even David said that he was going to, the annual sacrifice of the Yahudim. Um, or Judah, and so they had the Pesach, they had the Passover, and they had their king, but they asked for the other king. They asked for sacrifices when they already had the sacrifices. They had the harvest festivals, which everybody can talk about, like, oh, they were already doing these things. But if you look at it, it was always about first fruits. Sure, there was sacrifices involved in that, but in most cases, it was like them bringing their best of their food, their best of their wood, their best of their wine, their best of their oil. If you look at all the different harvest things that go on in Scripture, and then they took it into it. You can see that's why there's so much talk about, I think it's like 28 times there's different instances that says you don't drink blood or consume blood or the life is in the blood. There's different things like that. Why does that need to be told to his people? And it's obvious that it was because of the groups that came out of Egypt and different things with them. And they were um they were under this belief system that these are the things that got them benefits from their gods. And so Abba had to specifically, put things out there to rebuke it and say, no, this is not what we do. But it's very true. If you get into these things, you bring them into your life, they're eventually going to eat away at you. And anybody who's felt this, where you try and like kind of persuade yourself that, oh, it's okay. Abba's like, it's all grace. That's where certain things like you can't just say everything's all grace because that, like Proverbs 6:23 says, like reproofs of instructions are the way of life. Like your convictions of what is right in your heart. It's obvious. Like you don't just have complete malice towards your brother, and you're like, oh, I didn't stab him in the neck, so therefore he's alive and he's good. But like you're actively like destroying him in your heart with your thoughts and your emotions and maybe even your actions in life. So and it's like, sure, you're not like going and sleeping with this woman, but adultery starts in your mind and in your heart.
Yeah.
If your heart, if or if you're coveting these things, like you're obsessing over it so much. I gotta have this Lambo. I gotta have this. He's got it. Like, why can't I have it? I need to go. And now, like, you're like, oh, I gotta go do crypto. I gotta go do this. And if those are healthy things for people who get into, that's fine. But most people who are in crypto or different things like that know people who have lost everything. Coming from Vegas, 18 years out there, I got a lot of these examples where people would do it. That's why there's some crazy accidents in Vegas too, because somebody might have blown their wad and gave their house up on the craps table, and now they're driving home drunk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and just plow into a whole, set of people coming home from work and stuff. I mean, these obsessions will destroy you. Your exercise was like me being Mr. Personal Trainer and physical therapist. I got really obsessed. My body had to be a certain way. And then Abba had me tweak my shoulder, and it literally made my whole pec and arm atrophy on my right side. My right pec was always smaller than my left, and I'm the guy who fixed this on everybody.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, so he always does turn us over to our own ways. And a lot of times he does it in a loving way, but sometimes he has to be a little harsh about it, where he's showing us like, I've tried to show you this. And at least that's my personal
Yeah, that's the way I
conviction with.
believe it. As I said, so if my foot is, gosh, this is a constant nuisance, but at the end of the day, it's like that I'd rather it be a foot than something else. Like, it could be a lot worse than my foot. I mean, it's annoying, but it's manageable, and I can still say mostly fit. Maybe just not as from the outside appearance of myself. People can't probably tell much. Is like, oh, he still looks like he's fit, and of course only I know, and I think that's kind of the battle, like in your own mind about that. It's not me trying to be better than anyone else. It's trying to be as good or better than I used to be, and that's like the
Mhm.
the eternal battle is really difficult. But yeah, as you said, what I believe that here's the difference between what grace is supposed to be versus how these free grace people view it as. Free grace people act like it's just cheap and God will forgive you for whatever, so like it's fine. But I think what grace actually is, again, I always compare it to a relationship with your father. And so your father's going to give you a lot of chances, but he wants you to get it. He's giving you chances so you can make the right decision one day, not so you can continue to abuse it because he's a good father. Because again, because a kind of a good father doesn't just let you get away with everything. At some point, it's kind of like that. Sometimes you have to kick a kid out of the house when he's a certain age because you're just not obeying my rules. So, like, if you want to live under this house, you can live under my protection. You have all the benefit of being in this house. Then there's certain rules that I want you to follow, and it's not, you don't have to be perfect, but I expect you to respect me. And I think that's the thing. It's like, do you actually respect God when you're abusing His grace? And I think that's when He'll say, "Is that's what you want? That's what you can have. You can have as much as that as you want, but you can't have all the good things that come with living with me if you do that." And so, yes, then He turns you over to your own reprobate mind, even hopefully if it's only for a season, like the prodigal son. You go want to live in sin for a while. Well, how did it end up for the prodigal son? He ended up like envying the pigs and what they were eating. So then he came back humbled, and what does the father do? Rushes out to meet him, puts a robe on him, kisses him, gives him a ring,
Huge
invites him in
feast.
for a feast, and everything's forgiven. And I think that's the father's heart. And so you don't want to, but the father's not a sucker. The father he didn't go out there begging him to come back. When he was willing to come back, humbled and respected his father, the father loves him and wants him to come back. But that's the kind of grace where, again, if you continue to give a child things that will hurt him, well, you're not being a good parent and you're not teaching him anything. So I think that's what it's kind of like. It's kind of just simple practical things when you just understand like that God has given us a kind of a shadow here to help us understand. That's why, it compares us like that we're going to be the bride of Christ, and this is how you're supposed to treat somebody in a marriage. This is how God wants to be treated. And then so when you understand like the balances of relationships and family, that's what this is. It's a heavenly family. And he's trying to teach you here. I think this is kind of like, yeah, this is the kind of the simulation, if you will. Not I don't believe this is a computer program, but this is God's simulation. He's kind of like it's our proving ground of like
Yeah, yeah.
who where your heart is, what you're going to choose, and what you're going to do is right. So yeah, that's good. I think it was good. I feel like it's funny we didn't even open the show. I'm gonna have to
I
edit
was
them.
gonna say
I'm
that
gonna
in
have
the
to edit
beginning.
that. Well, we were rolling so much. I didn't want to like stop and break it. I said, oh, we'll just add that in. But anyways, Josh, but anyways, Josh, you want to get into the but anyways, Josh, do you want to get into the Enoch study? We can do a couple chapters there.
Do you want to do that, or do you want me to read this chapter since we're already like 115 in? Do you want me to kind of tease it? Because
There
maybe
might be
next
about
week.
10 minutes. Yeah, yeah, maybe we should just skip Enoch today.
Because
Because
I just wanted to read that, like, kind of, because we're gonna do that Ezekiel and different things like that, kind of showing the chapter chronological,
wait, how about I
chronological.
set you up? It's like and then I'm going to tease the modern roots thing.
All right, cool.
So Josh, you were saying before you wanted to instead of Enoch today, you want to do some stuff in the Maccabees.
Yeah, I just wanted to read that first chapter, just kind of like tease on what we're gonna do a little bit. It's kind of a little intro to it because I know a lot of people are questioning things. People write me and ask, but the chronological order of the chapters, not just the placement of the book inside the Bible, the 66 book canon, but also a lot of these books that have been removed. Other things that we talk about with Daniel, like this chapter has the Abomination of Desolation in it, and there was something that I just was talking to JT about that was absolutely mind blowing to me. To the placement of when the Abomination of Desolation took place, it's actually listed with days on the Hebrew calendar to reference. There's two different days on
Huh.
the 15th of Kislev and the 25th of Kislev, which falls in the like this year Hanukkah falls on the 14th going in, so it's the evening of the 14th, so that basically be the 14th evening through the 15th evening, which is interesting because that's the Gregorian calendar throws it all off and switches it up where because it shifts, and then they have intercalation. So it'll go forward all the way to the end of the month of December. Then it comes back to like more of the beginning of the month of December. But I know we're going to go into the chronological order of these books. I think we could even do it next week or maybe the week after if we're going to get back to Enoch. But I thought it would be really interesting so I pulled it up online if you want to get into it and just read this one chapter.
Before we get into Maccabees, tell us about Modern Roots Life.
All right, guys, please check us out. It's modernrootslife.com. It's a faith-based company where we're trying to reset things back to the way that Abba created it for us. We're trying to get away from synthetics and fillers and all these things that are even being pushed through the holistic world now. A lot of the holistic world is being exposed to the Western mindset and these different things that are there. And so I want to give you guys a place that provides good, clean products where you can just purchase them based on what you feel you need. We also do free coaching, free consults. We help people who can't afford it, and we allow people we have free programs to pay it back. If you want to get more bulk items, you don't feel like you can get the program, we have all those options. I always wanted to be in a place in my life where I could remove the objections when people really want to do it. If you're really about this and you really want to do it, we will get you the information, we'll get you the education, and we'll also make sure that you got the products to do the protocol. I feel like Abba wanted health to be free for us, or at least something we could cultivate with our own work and strength. So we're trying to do our best here. So love you guys. Appreciate all your support. All right, so this starts out. This is Alexander the Macedonian. I believe this kind of seems like it's where it splits into the first rulers of Greece and the four
I just
quadrants
think
of
it's
that.
crazy, just right off the bat, is the fact that Alexander the Great is somebody we all learned about in school. And there's a well, I mean, whatever you say, you could say it's a biblical book. I mean, it's in some people's Bibles, and the Protestants don't talk about this. It's kind of crazy to me. It's like that's interesting history. You know what I'm saying? Like, why doesn't that just belong in like the historical books? It's like Alexander the Great is mentioned in this, and yeah, it's just there's just a lot of gap. I don't like that 400-year gap in the biblical text.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting in the least. Could just if you look at this, I mean, it's in a lot of history books. A lot of people question if he was a real character or something, but I think you got it in the historical books. Then here, this book was in a lot of the older versions of scripture. So the four books of Maccabees has a lot of stuff into it. And the only reason we even go through these things, guys, is just for you to have your own take on it and say, if I'm believing that the Abomination of Desolation we're waiting for a third temple that's going to be set up, and then these things are going to resume when I can't find anywhere in scripture that says it's going to, end and then start back up again. And then you have a book that was removed for whatever reason four of them, and it literally lists the Abomination of
It
Desolation
literally
done.
says it happened. It already
Yeah.
says it
So,
happened, but, that's funny. We were talking about this, and we're not gonna get into the Charlie Kirk thing, but me and Josh were chatting off air, and I was talking to, like, kind of a guy who's done investigations and stuff, and he said, "What I don't try to do," he's like, "This guy was telling me this," and he said, "What I don't try to do is come up with my conclusion. And then, oh, so if I'm, conducting a crime investigation, I think this guy did it. So, and then I'm going to try to prove that this guy did it. It's like, because obviously you biased your investigation. He might have been the one who did it, but he might not have been the one who did it. And then meanwhile, you're delaying the idea of where you could actually find the real perp, whatever. So you think about it. So when you do that, he's saying, I'm going to collect all the information, and then I'm going to run it through a filter. And what the truth will be the conclusion anyways, right?
right,
So
right.
even if you think it was this one guy, then you'll find out that you were right. So what's interesting here, and I'll explain what I meant, why I'm explaining that, is that, okay, so if you believe that, yes, there's going to be a third temple, there's going to be an abomination of desolation, there's going to be Antichrist, all that stuff coming up. Well, you don't need to remove this book in order to prove what you already thought was true. Because if you believe what's true, then this won't like this will not disprove what you believe. But I do think it's interesting. Again, I am a little bit more conspiratorial. I say, well, why don't they teach us about the Jewish Roman War? Why don't they teach us about Antioch Epiphanes in church?
Right.
I wonder if it's kind of like, well, that's not what we don't want to get them confused because these are all future events. But if you read your Bible and it was actually a continuous book, even what's interesting to me is the fact that so it starts off after Alexander the Macedonian, Philip's son. So that's
Hmm.
Alexander the Great. Why is it starting out after Alexander the Great? You would think that there's this period too where Alexander the Great's doing his thing and that was kind of a big deal. Was there any, Hebrews writing about any of the historical things, how that affected them during that, when he was dominating Persia and expanding his kingdom?
Yeah, I mean, it tells you about like his domination here, right here. I mean, he collected a very. We'll just read it, but I mean, it really sheds a lot of light on it, and it does talk about his rule and how he basically dominated everybody. So, all right, let's get to it. So, after Alexander the Macedonian, Philip's son, who came from the land of Kittim, had defeated Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, he became king in his place, having first ruled in Greece. He fought many battles, captured fortresses, and put the kings of the earth to death. He advanced to the ends of the earth, gathering plunder from many nations. The earth fell silent before him, and his heart became proud and arrogant. He collected a very strong army and won dominion over provinces, nations, and rulers, and they paid him tribute. But after all this, he took to his bed, realizing that he was going to die. So he summoned his noblest officers, who had been brought up with him from his youth, and divided his kingdom among them while he was still alive. Alexander had reigned 12 years when he died. So his
So
officers took.
just think about that. Let's stop real quick. So Alexander the Great, it says that he went to the ends of the earth. Well, we're told he only went as far as India. So
Mhm.
they would have known if he got to the end or not. So it's kind of weird that he stopped. And so we're told that Alexander the Great, in 12 years, went to the ends of the earth. Isn't that crazy to think that? So we're told that the Romans ruled for like 1,000 years,
Right.
but they did not expand past where Alexander the Great's army went in Asia. And he did that in 12 years.
Yeah. That's pretty mind-blowing to think, for
Hmm.
sure. So Alexander reigned 12 years when he died, so his officers took over his kingdom, each in his own territory. And after his death, they all put on diadems. So did their sons after them for many years, multiplying evils on the earth. There sprang from these a sinful offshoot, Antiochus Epiphanes, son of the king Antiochus, once a hostage at Rome. He became king in 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. It's very well documenting the beginning of the kingdom of the Greeks here.
Hmm.
In those days there appeared in Israel transgressors of the law who seduced many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the Gentiles all around us, since we separated from them. Many evils have come upon us. Just what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's
The,
like that. So these people in Israel said, "Hey, look how great the Greeks are. Let's be like them." And
yeah,
God
let's make it.
says, "Go, yeah, go do that. That's where your heart is."
So the proposal was agreeable. Some from among the people promptly went to the king, and he authorized them to introduce the ordinances of the Gentiles. Thereupon, now the reason I brought this up was Daniel and how much of it is fulfilled in these books. And then the last portion of it that's fulfilled would be like Messiah's coming, his death and resurrection, so on and so forth. But in this, just think about the book of Daniel, where it talks about they sought to change times and laws and ordinances and the Sabbaths and like everything. They literally tried to destroy all of these things. And then listen to what I read in a single chapter of this book. The proposal was agreeable. Some from among the people promptly went to the king, and he authorized them to introduce the ordinances of the Gentiles. Thereupon, they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem according to the Gentile custom. They disguised their circumcision and abandoned the Holy Covenant. They allied themselves with the Gentiles and sold themselves to wrongdoing. When his kingdom seemed secure, Antiochus undertook to become king of the land of Egypt and to rule over both kingdoms. He invaded Egypt with a strong force, with chariots, elephants, and cavalry, and with a large fleet, to make war on Ptolemy, king of Egypt. Ptolemy was frightened at his presence and fled, and many were wounded and fell dead.
Okay, so
The,
just to stop real quick.
Mhm.
So if you read Daniel 11, that's the book I was talking about last week, that Daniel 11 is about that Alexander the Great, there's this one king, and then when his kingdom ends, it splits into four. But then the prophetic kind of back and forth is the king of the north and the king of the south. So Antiochus is the king of the north, and then Ptolemy is the king of the south, the king of Egypt. So it's talking about this continued back and forth battle between the king of the north and the king of the south.
So, we're laying out both kingdoms.
And what we're saying is not a little season theory. Like if you read study Bibles, they'll tell you like that scholars believe this is what Daniel's talking about. And this is what I was saying, that the secular scholars say Daniel had to be written after all this stuff took place because it is so accurate.
Yeah, literally. So it's so much of it is almost like if somebody said something and you say verbatim. I mean, it's to the T. The fortified cities in the land of Egypt were captured, and Antiochus plundered the land of Egypt. After Antiochus had defeated Egypt in the 43rd year, he returned and went up against Israel and against Jerusalem with a strong force. He insolently entered the sanctuary and took away the golden altar, the lampstand for the light with all its utensils. And if you read the book of Exodus through Numbers and understand what that lampstand with the light is, and the priests were supposed to pour oil into it to keep it burning continuously. So it's a very powerful, like kind of Holy Spirit type thing.
Mhm.
The offering table, the cups, the bowls, the golden censers, and the curtain, the cornices, and the golden ornaments of the facade of the temple. And he stripped it all off. He took away the silver and gold of the precious vessels, and he also took the hidden treasures, all the hidden treasures he could find. Taking all this, he went back to his own country. He shed much blood and spoke with great arrogance. And there was a great mourning throughout all Israel, and the rulers and the elders groaned. Young women and men languished, and the beauty of women faded. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, while the bride sitting in her chamber mourned, and the land quaked on account of its inhabitants, and all the house of Jacob was clothed with shame. And this is literally everything that, if you read the prophets and understand prophets, minor prophets, everything through there in basically the entire Old Testament. If you go through it, this is what Abba repeats over and over with the later judgments that he said was going to come to. Not the very end judgments, but this is, I mean, it kind of mirrors that in a way too, but this is exactly what he said was to come, that these things, especially the men, languish. It says they would be grabbing their loins as in a woman in travail or childbirth, and the women, like, the things would happen. They'd be ravished, and, we know what all that means. So, but all right, let's continue. 2 years later, the king sent the Mysian commander to the cities of Judah, and he came to Jerusalem with a strong force. He spoke to them deceitfully in peaceful terms, and they believed him. Then they attacked the city suddenly in a great onslaught and destroyed many of the people in Israel. He plundered the city and set fire to it, demolished its houses and its surrounding walls, and they took captive the women and children and seized the animals. Then they built up the city of David with a high, strong wall and strong towers, and it became their citadel. There they installed a sinful race, transgressors of the law, who fortified themselves inside it. They stored up weapons and provisions, depositing the plunder they had collected from Jerusalem, and they became a great snare. The citadel became an ambush against the sanctuary and a wicked adversary to Israel at all times. They shed innocent blood around the sanctuary. They defiled the sanctuary. Because of them, the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled away. She became the abode of strangers. She became a stranger of her own offspring, and her children forsook her. Her sanctuary became desolate as a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths to shame, her honor to contempt. As her glory had been, so great was her dishonor, and her exaltation was turned into mourning. So there it is. The Sabbath brought to shame, and it's about to expound on that. Then the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people and abandon their particular customs. All the Gentiles conformed to the command of the king. And many Israelites delighted in his religion. They sacrificed to idols and profaned the Sabbath. The king sent letters by messenger to Jerusalem and to the cities of Judah, ordering them to follow customs foreign to their land, to prohibit burnt offerings, sacrifices, and the libations in the sanctuary, to profane the Sabbaths and feast days, to desecrate the sanctuary and the sacred ministers, to build pagan altars and temples and shrines, to sacrifice swine and unclean animals, to leave their sons uncircumcised, and to defile themselves with every kind of impurity and abomination, so that they might forget the law and change all its ordinances. Whoever refused to act according to the command of the king was to be put to death. That's if you read Daniel and see the things that I was listing off. I mean, this is going
I know,
systematically.
it's
Like
crazy.
it's exactly what he said would happen. And he even says too, like, I don't care about your Sabbaths and your feast days and everything, because they were profaning them. Like before this happened, they basically were using those to say like, hey, we're still doing the feast, we're still doing the Sabbaths, we're still sacrificing, we're still doing this. Like, why is this coming against us, Father? You know? And he's showing you repeatedly, especially in the book of Ezekiel and Jeremiah, where he's saying like, I don't care about these things. You're not doing them for the right reasons. You're just, he says, you're basically stuck in repetition. You don't actually have a heart for me, and you're not doing these things because you love me. You're doing them because it's a thing that you believe brings righteousness and salvation, so that they might
Yeah.
forget the
So what does
law.
it say? Let me go into Daniel real quick. And this is Daniel 11, and it says, starting with verse 29, and at a time appointed he shall and come and return to the south, but it shall not be like the former or the latter. For the ships of Chittim shall come against him, and therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So, so shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And his arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away daily sacrifice, and they shall place abomination that maketh desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. Yeah,
Yeah,
what did it say?
Daniel 7:25 says, he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, and half a time.
And then what it
And it's
says, and they shall understand among the people, shall instruct many, yet shall fall by the sword and by flame and by captivity and by spoil many days. Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with a little help, but many shall cleave to the flatteries, and some shall understand, shall fall to try them and to purge and to make them white, even for the time of the end, because it is yet for an appointed time. What it says, and the king shall, according to his will, he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper until indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither regard of the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard for any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. But his estate shall be honor of God of forces, and the God whom his fathers knew not, and shall honor with gold, silver, precious stones, and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God whom he shall acknowledge and increase glory, and shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. But it's like I mean, if you just read what we just read, it's like that's what's being described.
even listen to what AI says. Daniel changing the times refers to two distinct ideas from the book of Daniel. In Daniel 2:21, the prophet states that God changes times and seasons, removing and establishing kings, and highlight divine sovereignty of the world over world events. In contrast, in Daniel 7:25, Daniel prophesies that a future little horn will attempt to change the times, like sacred feasts and laws, an action historically associated with Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes. This is even what like is the mainstream mainstream like AI and different scholars, as you were saying. It's literally what so many have say when people say like, "Oh, this is like a new thing that people are trying to tie this to it and use the Book of Maccabees." It's clearly not. This is something that was
It
his.
literally uses, like, Abomination of Desolation in certain in
Yeah, that's right where we're about to read right
yeah.
now. So, whoever refused to act according to the command of the king was put to death. In words such as these, he wrote to his whole kingdom. He appointed inspectors over all the people. He ordered the cities of Judah to offer sacrifices, each city in turn. Many of the people who abandoned the law joined them and committed evil in the land. They drove Israel into hiding wherever places of refuge could be found. Now, this is extremely important. I couldn't believe I never put this together. On the 15th day of the month of Kislev in the year 145. And some argue that based on the calendar compared to the Gregorian now or everything, that this would have started taking place during the times that we would say for Hanukkah leading up through Christmas. I'm not saying that everything would be like the origin of this, but what I want people to realize is Hanukkah is an altar dedication, temple altar dedication. It originally was at the tail end of Sukkot, which we know would have been in, like Messiah's birth would have been in the month of September. So that's originally where it was. You can read the Book of Kings. You can find this yourself. Then it gets changed to what we know as, the wintertime now, which makes no absolute sense. And we know that certain people in a certain place are doing these kind of dedications still to this day, and they're basing it on completely different things. And I want you guys to just think about the mind-blowing potential for what this is, because this is an altar thing that is happening with the Abomination of Desolation in Hanukkah. Remember, in John 10, Messiah was in that temple. The Solomon's porch was where he met the Pharisees, and that is outside the temple. He was never inside with their celebration like people think. So he was not subscribing to Hanukkah and being in there and supporting this. He was rebuking them outside of the temple on Solomon's porch, which was changed from Solomon's temple, which it used to be inside. The Gentiles used to be inside and they would see the things, and they were moved outside to look through the windows. But being an altar dedication, because in the original altar rededication, they went in, rebuilt it and everything, and they rededicated it, and it was their time that lasted the same amount of times, the 8 days. But now you can see here what is about to happen with a very much satanic altar dedication. On the 15th day of the month Kislev in the year 145, the king erected the desolating abomination upon. So this and other things, it literally says, my version here in the Septuagint, it says the abomination of desolation. So the desolating abomination upon the altar of burnt offerings, and in the surrounding cities of Judah, they built pagan altars. So they literally built an altar. It even talks about it more in here
And
on
so it's
top of
important.
the
It's kind
current
of
altar.
important just to know that the way this is written too is that it's not just this man of sin is doing these things because only he wants to. The people there were siding. There was obviously people who were against him, but there was a lot of people who wanted that. That's how the book starts. Is the fact that they wanted to make a deal and they wanted the Gentile customs, so they welcomed all this stuff in. So eventually, obviously, there's some real ones who are being put to death for denying it. But the main kind of religious people, probably the Pharisees, they were asking for this.
Yep, requesting it. And you can, I mean, it even goes right here. You'll see they also burn incense at the doors of the houses and in the streets. Any scrolls of the law or the instructions that were given by the Father that they found, they tore up and burned.
That's
Whoever
crazy. Just
was,
to think about that real quick is that you kind of wonder about a lot of manuscripts that people say, "Oh, they're not even that old." Well, maybe
yeah.
that's because lots of them were torn up and burned.
Yeah, and you see in Ezra, the book of Second Esdras, that all the people came to him and said, "You're the only prophet left. We have nothing. We have no scrolls. Like they were all burnt in Jerusalem." So, he goes to Abba and asks Abba to help him restore it, and he has 5 basically speed writers that went out for 40 days, coincidentally enough, and they rewrote the scriptures, and it even says that they wrote in characters they did not know, which is really that part to me is kind of mind blowing. Like, what characters did they write in that they didn't know?
But if
So.
they probably read it in Greek.
Yeah, I wonder if it was where people don't want to ever subscribe to that, but I wonder if he did. Like, if Abba's Abba's no fool, he's not stupid. He's gonna.
Well, they often say that scholars say that when Jesus is quoting the Old Testament, he's quoting from the Septuagint.
Yeah, that's honestly like when you read the Septuagint, it takes all of this stuff that is built in doctrines these days and it unwinds it. It doesn't say certain things that you see in the KJV Masoretic, that Hebrew Old Testament. You don't see it. You literally don't see the things that seem to be changed. And remember, a lot of these other ones in the modern Hebrew constructs were written in block Hebrew, which it didn't exist. So how is that possible?
Right. So that the the manuscripts that are written in Hebrew would most likely not be the oldest ones because the oldest ones got burned. So then if
Right.
you think about when they came back from Babylon, that Hebrew was like a dead language then.
Hmm.
So
Even till the
they
what
would have
was it
spoke
till 19 something?
they would have spoke Aramaic, which is kind of like a combination of other languages and Hebrew. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like a Sanskrit mix.
so the oldest manuscripts might be Greek because these other ones got burned and we don't know, people don't tell us that.
It says in the first chapter, I think, like right in the beginning of Daniel, it says that he brought the wisest of Israel, those young men, and they taught them these things to do. So if like Daniel's writing these books in like the Aramaic, he's obviously writing like a blended version because, Abba doesn't want nobody in that time to be able to read nothing. It's like
Right, yeah, yeah.
sometimes we have to think in a human kind of put ourselves in a human point of view. Abba's up there. He's omniscient, all knowing, everything like this, but he's obviously relating everything to humans and current people around there. So he's not just going to write it in a language that nobody would read and they wouldn't care to read. He's obviously going to create something that would be applicable for that region, that time, those
Mhm.
people. Um, so whoever was found with the scroll of the covenant and whoever was observed the law was condemned to death by the royal decree. This also goes back to what I say about reading. The scroll of the covenant was not Leviticus. It's literally the scroll of the covenant is said all the way from front to back of scripture is said to be the book of Exodus. So just food for thought. So when everybody's like, oh, the law, see, that's the law right there. That's the Torah. That's very like different way of taking it. When you read the book of Exodus, it even calls it the book of the covenant. So the scroll of the covenant, they were condemned to death. Like nobody wants to hear the 10 commandments back then. It would go against everything they're saying. They're talking
Mhm.
about multiple gods. They're saying, no, you can only have one God. So they used their power against Israel, against those who were caught each month in the cities. Listen to this. On the 25th day of each month, they sacrificed on the pagan altar that was over the altar of the burnt offerings. In keeping with the decree, they put to death women who had their children circumcised. But in the Septuagint, it literally says on the 25th day of Kislev, they started this. So just remember what I just said. I'm not saying this is exactly to the
Wait, so you're
T, but if
saying that on the 15th of Kislev, they set up the Abomination of Desolation, which is when Hanukkah starts.
yeah, because it's 8 day. It's literally an 8 day altar dedication. And if you look at the way it is now, okay, it just so happens that this year that day lands on the 14th and 15th of December. Okay, in their altar dedication is 8 days from them, which takes you through the 23rd and leaves you on Christmas Eve. You go to the next day is Christmas Eve, which would be the eve of this. And so this year, coincidentally enough, if you applied this to it, and maybe it could have been what it was back then, it would have been the 15th of December and the 25th of December is exactly what we're looking at right here. I
Wow,
got,
so Hanukkah is when the Abomination of Desolation starts, and then on the 25th is when they were doing sacrifices of was it people?
yeah, they were killing they put to death women and their children who were circumcised, and they hung their babies from their necks, their families also, and those who had circumcised them were killed. But many in Israel were determined and resolved in their heart not to eat anything unclean. They preferred to die rather than to be defiled with the food or to profane the holy covenant, and they did die. And very great wrath came upon Israel. And this is expounded upon throughout the 4 books of Maccabees, but the 4th book of Maccabees is mind blowing because they're putting them on the torture wheel. They're going through all this stuff. Even it's a story about a mom who had 7 sons, and she watched each one of them in succession of the other get destroyed on the torture wheel. And she would clench their hands and tell them, "Don't give in." No, like they're watching each. She watched every one of her sons die, and each one of them watched their brothers before them. And then the very last one is the youngest, and she was gonna, go on it. And he runs up there telling the king, was it Antiochus Epiphanes, telling him, "Oh, I'm going to give in Because he said, if any of you would come to me, I'll give you great riches in my kingdom. Just come here and be with me and just denounce this ways that you have. And the little kid runs up to him and says, oh, I'm going to do it. And so he's like, great. One of them finally wakes up to his senses, and they had a cauldron of boiling oil they were throwing people in after the torture wheel. And the little kid tells him, basically, my pain in this cauldron will be instant and it will be very short, but your eternal death in the flames will be forever. And he jumped into the cauldron. And basically, and to say that he wasn't going to give in. And then the mom, of course, she died on the torture wheel and stuff like that. But it's just, when you look at this, like, I got goosebumps all over.
Well, anyways, that's some interesting stuff, Josh. We should probably leave it there today, and maybe we'll get back to the Enoch study next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely end it there. I think we could talk for hours on this subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. You guys are awesome. Again, if you guys want to support this podcast, please check out Modern Roots Life, link in the description, and let us know what you guys want to hear. If you guys want us, because again, we like to go off script a little bit, and we like to talk about whatever. So if you guys have any topics that you want us to hit, any chapters of the Bible you want us to hit, anything you guys want us to talk about, let us know in the comments. We love you guys. God bless.
Love you guys. Thank you.